Good morning and welcome back to Daybreak on Citizen TV. This is the show that brings you and tells you what you need to think about as you begin your day. And being Monday, this is what brings you the information that you need to consider as you begin the week. And it is the 10th of December, 2018. My name is Sam Gituko and welcome back to Daybreak. I'm joined by a panel here of Professor Jacqueline Odol, nominated Member of Parliament. Karibu sana. Beatrice Elachi, Honorable. Karibu sana. Welcome back to the show. It's been quite a while.
Thank you.
Ulipotelea wapi?
Nico, I decided to go. I've been doing a lot of small capacity building in Kibra. Then I went sometime in Kajiado.
Okay.
Just meeting girls who have finished and who are, some of them joining now Form 1 and some who are waiting for their results.
Part of giving back to the society.
Yes.
And Jem Divo, former magistrate and a lawyer, wakili, karibu sana. And thank you for joining us on Daybreak to focus on the stories that are making headlines this morning. And first we begin with the Standard, the front page. You'll see there, graft charges ready, asset freeze begins. This is NHIF, Kenya Pipeline bosses. They spent the weekend in cold cells. DPP office reports charges ready and they will appear in court today. The Assets Recovery Agency moves to seize their property and accounts and all to face multiple charges on project planning and corruption. Of course, that has been given prominence by the Standard, and it's detailed coverage on page 4 and 5. And you will see also proposed law to make Paul Luz sign a concession. That is on still on the front page of the Standard. You'll see accept defeat. MPs come up, or rather an MP comes up with law seeking to make it compulsory for election losers to sign acceptance forms. But even if they don't, this will not invalidate results. I don't know the wisdom in forming that decision.
Or the greater lack of it.
The wisdom or lack of it, because I mean,
actually, of all the laws that we need in Kenya, a law to force election losers to sign that they've lost.
But how have they lost?
Really?
It's only in Kenya where people think you've lost. If you have roughly 40,000 people behind you and you have 41.
yes.
Or you can find even somebody telling you, for example, I know an MCA in Nairobi who just won with 10 votes. So now what is that?
Yeah.
If you retally properly,
Yes.
and open it properly, you will be so surprised.
Yes.
So now this one doesn't understand where Kenya is headed.
Okay. And we'll be looking at that. That is on page 8 of the Standard. Then let's look at the front page of the Daily Nation. You'll see riddle of 61 billion shilling money pit at KPC, that is the Kenya Pipeline Company. And 2 years ago, Kenya Pipeline asked for 13 billion shillings as a top up to its 48 billion shilling allocation. Treasury said the firm could not absorb such a huge amount of money, but still approved the request. Now detectives believe that a lot of that money was stolen. So quite a detailed account of the issues that happened between the financial year of 2015 until 2015-16, 2016-17, and some of the suspects are expected to be in court today. And that story continues on the second page of the Daily Nation. Detectives are investigating how the state corporation spent colossal amount despite Treasury's concern on absorptive capacity. And I think I want us to begin right there, because we know that the suspects from the KPC and NHIF are expected in court today. And looking at that amount, 61 billion shillings, an expenditure that could not be accounted for. Of course, the story giving a lot of detailed accounts of what transpired. And I'm just wondering, once again, this is a question that you haven't found an answer. We're talking about 2015-16, 2016-17, and now here we are trying to walk back in the history lane. Do you think we'll finally nail these culprits? We begin with Beatrice.
Well, it's very sad. You know, every morning when we wake up, 61 billion, 10 billion, I think it makes the country feel very sad. Yeah? And the sad part of it is that now we are dealing with 2016. So you can imagine by the time you come to 2022, when you're dealing with 2017 and 2018 or 2019, you'll find that it's more than not just 61. You'll have quite a sum of amounts lost. And maybe that is one thing we need to ask ourselves in all this that we are doing. And yes, we have goodwill from the president, from the top we have goodwill. From us Kenyans, because I think now it is for us Kenyans. Where we have reached, I think changing Kenya is not the laws. changing Kenya is us, because you, and I want to speak to my fellow Christians. You know, we say 85% of this country are Christians. So are we the Christians who are killing our own country? There's something we need to ask ourselves. I don't want to talk about my Muslim brothers. I'm saying we normally say we are 85%. It means if we are real Christians, if we are real serious about following the commands of God, then I think somewhere we must change as us without looking at the figures, because we've looked at these figures, and when you get to 1 billion, and do you ask yourself a question that, have I acquired? Do you ask? And you know, I want to tell Kenyans this morning, look at our children today. We are doing this, it's so good. But when I look at families who did this in the days of I look at them today and you sympathize with them. They are not enjoying anything. Most of them went into drugs. Most of them have become, they don't even understand. If they were at one point they fight for this property, they don't enjoy it. I think God just comes in a way and destroys those families. And so your parents have passed on, but here you are, you look at property and you're wondering whether it was yours, and it is the same.
Right.
There's no way we are going to run away from this, because today many Kenyans are suffering. Today we have those who are wondering, what are we going to give our children? And then they open this. And that is why sometimes when you hear Waheshimiwa now fighting, you'll support Mheshimiwa. Let me say why. Because Mheshimiwa wakes up in the morning and there's a line of everybody again on him or her. That I'm supposed to do this and this and this. You're so lucky, you're stealing, but you're somewhere very quiet, so nobody knows. Then you come and enjoy people and you tell them how rich you are, how wealthy you are, how you're doing very well. My children go to Turi. But then, kumbe, wewe, you are finishing Kenya as your children go to Turi. May they never see the light with that Turi of theirs. Because where we have reached is to curse now, surely. Where we've reached, we are telling God, God, destroy them. Give them all the cancers. Give them all the diseases, because they have the money to treat themselves. Yes. Wow. But the government should also spare us now on this. If someone has assets and you value assets vis-a-vis salary, remove.
Take it back.
Take it back. Take it back. Let us stop joking now with our country.
Professor Dual, you've been in government, and I see this note that the Treasury had indicated that KPC did not have the capacity to absorb these resources, but eventually through a cabinet decision it was approved, and you see that the CS Treasury, Henry Rotich, indicated to the KPC Managing Director that he was responsible for the resources, but still we're here. So it appears that government knows there are brilliant people who can tell whether an institution has the capacity to utilize the resources as planned. But then again, it was still done. What really happens in government that we find ourselves in such a predicament that we can actually avoid?
I think, Sam, thank you very much for that. I would like to say that where we are in Kenya today is what we see reflected here, because we have progressively ceased to not only respect, but also to allow the different institutions to engage as is defined by regulations, by the requirement. When I was in government, in the coalition government, I think Kenyans would say that the period between 2002 up to 2013, it might have had its issues, but this was a time where we not only kind of got the new Kenya nation. I think the building bridges was trying to go back, you know, to catch that. But this was the period where you could find that in government, you are going to find that you do not include politics. That although the cabinet secretary, the minister, was appointed, was elected, when they get to be appointed to be minister by the president, they find that there is a permanent secretary, and that's what I was. I came in as secretary for children, then I became permanent secretary. But the permanent secretary later, as you are appointed by the president, you clearly indicated, you are told you are an accounting and an authorizing officer, meaning anything that goes wrong, you are going to be the one to explain. But you are also clearly informed that you have government officers, seasoned government officers who've been there, because you're appointed, you're just coming in, but you're actually told, all right, you're going to be accountable, you're going to be the authorizing, but you're not alone. You have the CFO, you have the Director of Administration, you have all these other officers. Sam, my honest view is that we have progressively in Kenya politicized government. We cannot tell the difference. And I think we were with you here the other time when we were saying that when politicians get the microphone, they completely, you know, now resonate with the crowd, that sometimes does not even know what they're looking for. As Honorable Lachi was saying, you find that in the morning, there are people who are lining up at your door. So I think my answer and my response would be that we in Kenya, clearly from the president, now has seen political will. This is important. But I think what we are missing is trust of the people. I think what we are missing is a way where we get back and we get Kenyans who really know what needs to be done. The public Kenyans, the Wanjiko, the people who are out there. And I also think that when we look at what we see CS Rotich indicating and what was happening in government, we really have to just squarely come back and say, so when are we going to allow the government officers to work? I was a secretary for children. I must say, even up to now, I link up with officers in government. They will not tell you, because officers in government are trained not to look like they are engaging in politics, but a number of them can barely do their work. And you will find that people who come in, who have quote-unquote connections, or who sort of seem to have some other political, you know, support, are doing all kinds of things. So you're going to find that government is really not operating as it should. And I think if we looked even at the report that was tabled in Parliament, the PAC, Parliamentary Accounts Committee report, and we look at what the Auditor General said, we can squarely see that we are not even doing simple things like surrendering interest, and we are not even following that. So I really would want to say that what we need to do as Kenya is to separate politics from government, stop politicizing government work, and then allow the political will that is coming from the top to be supported by the middle, and we will really just be able to sort this out.
Great. And just before I get to you, Joy, if you look at the front page of the Standard, you'll see the six suspects that have been highlighted there. There is former Kenya Pipeline Managing Director Joe Sang, and he is believed that during his watch, an improper award of tender for construction of Kisumu oil jetty worth 1.9 billion shillings was awarded. Then there is Gloria Kafafa, the Kenya Pipeline Company Secretary, is accused of using her office to improperly confer a benefit for the construction of Kisumu oil jetty beyond the approved budget. Then, of course, there's another story there of NHIF CEO Geoffrey Mwangi. The number of suspects facing 17 charges related to NHIF are 21, and that talks about 1.1 billion shillings. They faces 3 counts of abuse of office. That is Geoffrey Mwangi, the CEO. Charges relate to numerous contracts awarded to WebTribe Limited. And then the same are still on NHIF. Simeon Kirgoti, the former NHIF CEO, there's 49.5 million shillings procurement of revenue collection system without prior planning. And then Danson Moshemi, Jumbo Pay CEO, 1.1 billion shillings fraudulent acquisition of public property. And I'm just wondering, we see that the DPP now is just about to get to the courtroom. The Assets Recovery Agency has moved in to seize the property of the suspects, but in the history of all these works that have been conducted, of course, EACC tells us that sometimes they have been in a position to recover resources from suspects. And I'm just wondering, this is money that was meant to execute a certain project for the case of KPC. And for the case of NHIF, it was supposed to go to helping patients Kenyans who are members of the fund or who contribute to the fund. So we lose the real-time value of money when we need it. Does this still help us, the Asset Recovery Agency, the assets? How do we balance all that, the due process of law, and what that money was meant to do when it was supposed to be done?
Thanks, Sam, for that question. Let me start from where Moshimiwa Professor left off. With the politicization of government, there is something what this picture does not show us. There is the backstory. Because all these people sit in office, and there's always the unseen hand behind everything. In Kenya, Tenders are the be-all and end-all of when you want to get rich. Look for a tender. Look for a nice, beautiful, reasonable, ile itafanya wache maskini na kona saba sort of tender. And some of these people sit in office and they're honestly puppets in the game. They're not the architects or the orchestrators. There is a puppet master playing the marionettes.
Right.
Now, when we do not see the puppet master, it means we crucify these people. I'm not saying that they're not culpable. All I'm saying is that sometimes this fight of graft is smoke and mirrors. And if we want to get to the bottom of it, let's find out who are the real and actual beneficiaries of these activities. Who really had an interest in, because I would be hard pressed to imagine that as a state corporation officer, you'd be sitting there and all that money would be ending up in your pocket. I'm sure there's a line from here to next year that is waiting to receive from that pipeline as it flows along. Be that as it may, now comes to your second question, that what happens even if we recover the assets? There was something that was supposed to have been done that has not been done. And when we get the money back, by that time, whatever was supposed to be done probably even costs more. And that's part of the cost of corruption. Because what it does, we have all these theatrics that helps people think that there is progress when there's actually none. For example, when we were talking about tallow oil the other day, and there was all this brouhaha about shipping the oil to Mombasa to be stored. And we're talking about, I mean, what about the pipeline? Can we not use the pipeline? And then you find that the pipeline is here sitting as a, I don't know, it's a looting den. That tells you then, while they were looking for the oil in Turkana, somebody knew that our oil was viscous to a certain level. So I'm sure that there is this technology to ensure that this oil could get to Mombasa while it is still fluid. But people do not use that opportunity to get to that place where they deliver what people actually need. They are creating their own other things that look like the activities, that they're doing the activities, but it's not delivering service. But over and above that, there is the cost to the mwananchi, because all this money that is paid comes from the kitty. There is something that's not being done somewhere so that this can get done. And when you get to a place where it takes cabinet to force the hand to say, you know what, they have their capacity to absorb those funds. That takes me back to my first point, the unseen hand behind all these wars and all these troubles. Who else is involved in this? But finally, let me make the point that as Kenyans, we also need to come to a point where let us be honest with ourselves. Looking at what, for example, is happening in NHIF, it's a matter of procuring software. This is something that if the government in the Ministry of ICT had a hub of young inventors coming up with softwares and programs and apps and systems that the government owns, there'd be no need to pay people hundreds of thousands and of shillings and actually giving them contracts that tie you for 2 or 3 years to use the technology, while we have the capacity to develop our own. But remember what the president said when he was appointing Mudiawari, is that he keeps giving young people a chance, and when they get there, they're not interested in utilizing their potential. They have proved to him that they're interested in quite the opposite. So again, as the panel has said this morning, value systems. We need to hit the factory reset button in Kenya. You've gotten to a place where I'm an intellectual, I am a professional, but when I go in that space, the first thing I'm looking for is, where am I getting something out of it?
Right.
So it's true, the value to Kenyans is not coming through. And not only that, at the end of the day, something that ought to be done has not been done. So we'll have to use more money to still get it done. And that's a bigger tragedy, I think.